Gotta look pretty for the camera.
Okay, perfect. Um, so most of you guys know me, but my name is Brianna, and I am at Hope Springs in a summer position here under the title Cancer Care Service Coordinator, but have been mostly working on all the youth programming, both developing it and then executing it. Very excited to be here today and kind of give you a little introduction to our guest speaker. So I'm just going to go over a couple slides quick just to kind of introduce the topic here. So, firstly, I wanted to go over what self-compassion is for those who need a refresher, as this will help you understand a greater scheme of the presentation later on. Self-compassion is how we view different situations and engage with our own thoughts and feelings. It, um, it invoices treating others with the same kindness and understanding we offer to others, like our family and friends, in times of difficulty, failure, or self-doubt. We acknowledge our pain rather than ignoring it and give ourselves comfort and care. It's about recognizing that everyone faces challenges, as it is a fundamental aspect of being human. And then now, kind of the importance of self-compassion is it helps us deal with challenges and disappointments while also improving self-esteem and self-worth. It encourages confidence and resilience, allowing us to accept our mistakes as well. It can inspire gratitude towards ourselves, allowing us to show appreciation and kindness to our own bodies. Self-compassion is also fosters positive mental health by supporting the development of stronger connections with others and empowering us to live more fulfilling life. And then quickly just understanding what positive self-advocating is knowing the um, importance and ability to effectively communicate, assert and stand up for one's own needs, desires, and rights in a constructive and respectful manner. It involves understanding your own strengths, weaknesses, and goals and expressing them in a way that promotes personal growth, well-being, and positive outcomes. And then some key components of positive self-advocacy, as you can see, is self-awareness. So being able to understand your own needs, strengths, and areas of improvement, communication skills, being able to express yourself clearly and assertively while being respectful of others. Confidence, so believing in your rights to speak up and advocate for yourself. Problem solving, being able to identify challenges and work towards solutions that meet your needs. And then resilience, so persisting in advocating efforts even when faced with obstacles or resistance. And then before I pass it over to our guest speaker, please keep in mind that being imperfect is something that we all share. We all have emotions that feel good and ones that are uncomfortable, and they are all okay to feel. Lastly, it will take time to learn how to be patient with ourselves, and that is okay. And then I'm now going to turn it over to our guest speaker, Dr. Neil Naik, who will be talking on how positive self-advocacy can lead to greater positive medical outcomes. So welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brianna. And those are great slides. Really appreciate you leading us into what self-advocacy is. As Brianna mentioned, I'm Neil. I'm a family doctor in Waterloo, and I'm the primary care cancer screening lead for Waterloo Wellington. I'm also involved with the Patients Before Paperwork team at Ontario Health and the regional clinical lead for Ontario Health West. Um, Along the lines of all the things that I do in my practice, one of the biggest things that really allows for people to be comfortable with themselves, to make changes for themselves, to advocate for themselves is that self-compassion and making sure that that is all in all the most important thing. I'd say about 50% of people today were that I just saw were self-deprecating. And it really takes a toll because on top of any other conditions that you may or may not have, being mean to oneself, and I'm gonna be blunt with it, being mean to oneself is perhaps the worst thing you can do because any positive changes you try to make will always have that internal voice inside of us saying, "Why are you even bothering? Why are you doing that? What's the point?" And there is a point, there is a reason, there is a, you know, a drive that makes us course, there is always going to be something that is negative, but there's also a positive, and you can't have one without the other. So my goal for today is to advocate for that change, to make sure that we do take care of oneself and that we have that self-compassion throughout. I have a bunch of slides, but by all means, these slides are meant as a to spur discussion. So interrupt me, come off mute. I don't bite, especially through a webcam. I can't. So by all means, interrupt me. I don't mind. My only rule of thumb here is that we keep personal questions about am I on the right medications? Is this the right thing for me and stuff like that? I can't answer that, let alone on a recorded online session. I'm not an oncologist. I'm not a specialist. I have some knowledge. I don't have the good stuff, essentially. So by all means, I can try in a general sense to answer questions if folks have questions about like, hey, why do certain drugs cause, these side effects? But specific questions about a personal health, I unfortunately can't answer those. But feel free to ask questions, probe what I'm saying, and I'm happy to answer. In regards to the PowerPoint presentation I have, we don't have to get through all the slides, and that's okay. Part of this is to learn about different techniques that we can do, things that have been proven through science, literature, research studies that have shown to improve people's lifespans, to improve people's outcomes, to improve people's um, well-being. And so happy to dive deep into some of these things. I'll tell you when I know a lot, and I'll tell you when I don't know a lot, and we'll go through that. All right, with that, let me share my screen and we'll get started on this. For the sake of this program, I'm a big fan of declaring all conflicts of interest and any challenges to my conflicts of interest. So by all means, the only one that's relevant to this is that I am the primary care cancer screening lead for the Waterloo Wellington Regional Cancer Program, and I do get paid by them. And so this presentation in particular is a volunteer presentation. I'm doing it out of because I'm passionate about the topic, but I do get paid through the regional cancer program. The other anecdote here is that majority, with the exception of 2 photos, the majority of photos here are developed by artificial intelligence. I am a huge AI nerd and love my artificial intelligence. And so I just want to give a heads up that these images are are through the Creative Commons license. They're not my own. They were created under AI under that Creative Commons license. All right, so what we're looking at here is a path of healing for cancer patients and caregivers, regardless of what the outcome is, and making sure that, hey, you know what, we do need to nurture that kindness throughout this. And so the whole point of all this is that we need to start acknowledging the change that's happening to our bodies. I know that sounds a lot like the talk that we give to our kids whenever they're going through puberty, or that we heard when we were going through puberty about acknowledging the change that happens to our bodies. Change is just part of life, and it's part of the changes that happen to our bodies. And what it leads to and why there's so much fear with it is it's the uncertainty. It's the new sensation in your body that you don't understand. It's the feeling of loss and the stress that comes with that. Was there something that could have been done differently? But honestly, there's not much that can be done at that stage beyond just looking forward and being good with yourself and in the now. And how that, in being aware of how that impacts your physical and emotional health is incredibly important in order to make sure that you understand how that changes you. And then that leads us to that importance of compassion itself, that there blaming oneself for medical conditions, for stuff like that, doesn't make it better. But being able to acknowledge that, hey, I have this and how can I work on making it better can help with that lifelong self compassion and help us cope with that stress, fear, and grief to make us more supportive. It is not the fault of somebody or somebody else, it is not the fault of yourself. When we're suffering and we're in pain, it is not anyone's fault. It is simply a fact of the disease. Caregivers need to take care of themselves in terms of the neglect that they feel. Self compassion is important, making sure that you take time for yourself to replenish your own social batteries, your own emotional batteries, There will be ups and downs. Nobody is asking for people to be flat affected. And I always go back to that yin and yang concept from Eastern health and stuff like that, or the Far East health, which is you can't have one without the other. And it's okay to be human, and it's okay to have those emotional roller coasters. And that leads us towards making sure that our mental health is not something that we do in isolation, but it's something that we have our support, our security blanket to make sure that we have people we can talk to, whether that is clinicians or counselors or friends or families, people who embrace you without the judgment. And then finally, for today, it's all about inviting you all to feel that way and to come out and come forward and say, you know what, I do need help. How do I get that? I do need to take care of myself. What do I need to do? And I need to help others who needs that. And that's really important. So, as I mentioned before, it's all about treating yourself with the kindness and care and understanding that you'd offer anyone else. If somebody were to come to you and say, "Hey, Brianna, I'm having a hard time. Do you mind just listening for a bit?" That's okay. And because we need to, and that's what we should expect of ourselves of saying, you know what, I need to sit down in a corner and just say, "Hey, Neil, I recently tore my Achilles. Your Achilles is torn. I know you really want to go and walk, but you really can't. And that's okay. And the body did fail you there, but that's what it's going to happen if you do crazy sports. And so it's about making sure that you're not criticizing your body for failing you. It's not that your body has done something wrong. It is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And that's really important to make sure that you have that understanding of yourself and that you're not negatively impacting you. Otherwise, you're going to stop doing things that are good for you in terms of eating, drinking, exercising, going out, meditating, seeing friends. Your friends do want to be around you. And so it's not about self compassion, is really important in terms of it's not self pity. It's not selfishness. It's not about saying, I'm going to focus on myself and only myself. You can still have the emotional outreach of taking care of other people. You can still be looking after others and not feeling bad about oneself. But it's about how you can positively influence yourself and how that can actually impact everyone around you as well. Because it shows that resilience and it builds that resilience inside of you as well, especially in challenging situations. Um, Being able to emotionally release as well, whether that's anger, fear, crying, is a normal part of that as well. And that's part of that self compassion piece as well, that it is okay to have those emotional pieces because that's how you understand what is happening to you. It's our body's way of releasing emotions. Um, and we're often really, really hard to ourselves. We are our own biggest critics. We do blame ourselves for doing things and saying things and stuff like that. And it's important to balance that out. Um, yeah, we all make mistakes, and that's okay. I do lose my keys at times. I do have bad habits as well. But it's understanding that, you know what, there is a reason why those are there. There's a way of fixing that, but if I'm continuously negative to myself, you lose that drive to make those changes. And the first step is to take care of oneself and then let your body do it. Because as I mentioned before, it helps to build that resilience. That resilience helps you to bounce back from those setbacks because again, you will feel sad. You will have that complex emotions. And how do you recover from that? Something I do on the side in my medical office is weight management. It's very similar where we want to have that piece of cake. We do want to have those cookies. And the biggest thing that we always do afterwards is say, Neil, you shouldn't have had those cookies. Why did you do that? But what if I wanted those cookies because I had a bad day? And that's okay. But if I were to kick myself and say, yeah, you did something wrong, et cetera, at some point, just like how I'll push somebody who's negative out of my life because I just don't need to hear it anymore, you don't need to push yourself. Had a long day, you had a hard time, you're taking care of somebody who really needed you, and you just need time to take care of yourself, make sure that you do take care of yourself. And that will actually help in regards to lowering those levels of mental health roller coasters. You'll be able to be more present for those who are around you. And even at the hardest and most difficult times, will help to build up that resilience so that you can make the decisions or reactions that you need at the right time for the right thing. And so I did put together this Venn diagram, and it's very much about talking about countering thoughts, and that yin and yang concept, but I made them into a three-part Venn diagram rather than just two. And it's very much about that. We talked about self-kindness and self-judgment. We talked about the common humanity versus isolation. We don't want to be stuck in our own thoughts. We don't want to be stuck in home. We do need to share our thoughts and feelings when somebody's ready. And then finally, we need to look at the mindfulness versus over-identification. And that mindfulness piece is very much about acknowledging the signs and symptoms and feelings that we're experiencing, but we don't want to get to a point where we're overdoing it and over identifying things and then making it very selfish as well. So when we jump into self kindness and self judgment, it's about facing those difficulties or seeing those mistakes that you feel may have been done to yourself. And instead of criticizing yourself, it's about being kind to yourself and saying, all right, something happened. How do I do this better next time? How do I do this in a more resilient way? How do I do this in a way that I can express myself emotionally? And that's good. Expressing yourself emotionally is great. I think I made four people emotional today, both crying and happy and all the other aspects. And it was a great time in terms of being able to understand one another and be able to find out what the needs are. When we look at that common humanity versus isolation, it's about understanding that not everyone suffers alone. And the only way and the only time that you could ever actually know that somebody's suffering or knowing is by sharing. That sharing that vulnerability allows for others to also feel that as well. And so, as a caregiver, should you be one, it's important to say, hey, you know what? I know you're having a hard time. This is what happened to me. And I'm not saying my situation is the same as your situation, but know that it is hard and it is not easy. And you're probably going through something that's a lot worse. Talk to me, call me. Go have coffee, tea. Let's go have dinner one day. Let's talk about it because isolation makes things worse. And sometimes we need a friend to hear us, to be able to find out, hey, how do we do better? How do we do better by making ourselves feel better, not by just doing better? And then finally, for the mindfulness versus over identification, it's about being aware of your painful thoughts and feelings. It's so that you can gain that perspective and not letting the emotions control you. As I said, having emotions is totally normal. And in fact, I highly encourage it. It's what makes humans human. One of the reasons why I chose an artificial intelligence to make all the photos today is because understanding emotions and acknowledging them from afar, like an AI would, versus actually feeling the emotions and having to live with them are two very different things. And we need to understand what our feelings are. Otherwise, we will go through life monotonically, and we will go through our condition and our disease and our caring of others monotonically. And that doesn't help in regards to the healing process. And so I really want to acknowledge here that the images that are created here in this images is there's a superficiality to it, and there's a deep aspect to that. And mindfulness allows you to acknowledge your feelings and your emotions and letting you not or almost not letting them control you, but you understand what they are doing so you can be like, okay, I'm sad because of this. And you dive deep into it and you understand it and it doesn't take over. So how do we practice this? So a couple of things I get some of my patients to do and some of my friends and families to do when they go through tough times is to take a pause. It doesn't have to be with deep breathing. It doesn't have to be with self-talk. I know I have these things on my slides and they're important. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of this, as some of my friends and family members have told me, is fluffy. It's soft. It's not the hardness that we need to get through a tough time. And in fact, actually, you know what it is? I'm gonna push back on that, and I do all the time. It is exactly what our bodies need, which is you do need to take a moment where you're not doing work, where you're not doing absolutely anything, whether that's taking care of somebody else, and just take a deep breath and just sit there and do nothing and let the thoughts flow through you. And if that causes an emotional response, let it happen. Because the only way to find out how to deal with that emotional response is by looking at it and by seeing it and letting it happen on your time when you're in control. And that's what mindful breathing does is it gives the control back to you. I've been saying this throughout the presentation primarily because it's been the theme of my day here to my in my clinic, which is positive self-talk. When one person says, "Hey, I'm not doing enough," or "I could have done that differently," or "I should have done something else," well, that negative thought really has an impact on all the other decisions you make. Reframing it to, "I've done a lot. What else could I do?" Or, "I've done the best I can in this situation. Maybe next time when it happens again, I could just take a different route." And that reframe really gives you the hope of there is a next time, one, but two, there are other ways, and it's that self growth that happens. Combining these two things together leads us to the self compassion break. And that's more so acknowledging the suffering that you're having, understanding that's part of your human existence, and then building on that in terms of that building of the kindness. And so that you're growing with it. And that way, the overwhelming feeling, you acknowledge it, but you also give yourself a way through it and a pathway through it. So you can make sure that the next time it happens, it's not a repeat of the same sort of emotional, distressing emotions that were overwhelming you, but more so a self-compassion emotions and acknowledging that emotions are a normal part of being human. And it's not something we should be blocking. You can't block emotions, unfortunately. They're part of who we are as humans, and there are no drugs that block it. There are no techniques that block it. There is nothing we can do to block it. And so any thoughts that we have that makes us think that we're doing that only delays the inevitable. And so how do we channel that through? The final one is journaling. And some people are like, "Well, I don't write. I don't carry this around." Who does that? Actually, I journal using my email. I send an email to myself. WhatsApp actually allows you to text yourself now. So I actually text myself things all the time. I'm that weird guy who sends Instagram reels to all my friends. Well, I'll send an Instagram to myself as well, being like, "Hey, you know what? You got to go read that book or that article again." Or here's a quote that you can use next time you're feeling overwhelmed. Um, because I think acknowledging first off that we are emotional people makes it better for everyone around us. It makes it less traumatizing. It makes it more compassionate in terms of being there emotionally for others so that when they're having a hard time, you, as either the patient or the caregiver, are there for them as well because it's equals or not equal, but there's stress all around. So there's different places where you can get more information. Hope Springs has a cancer support center, and they have information, group sessions, counseling, and wellness programs. There's a caregiver organization through Ontario, and they provide respite services and peer support groups, and they can help you through this. Wellspring is the national version of all the supportive care programs and can connect you to different resources. And the Canadian Cancer Society's website also has helplines, can help you with some of the more challenging aspects of the logistics of getting the healthcare that you need. Highly credible, and they have all the resources you need. Your cancer center is another great option here as well, in terms of having the resources and connecting with the oncologist, with the surgeon, with the clinicians there to find out what other resources are available is really important. One of our biggest partners and supporters, HopeSpring, is there as well. Can are a regular guest at our sessions together as well. There's a role to community, and this is not meant to be a way of coercing anyone or making folks feel like I'm forcing you to join the community. It's very much when you're ready for it and when you feel that you're ready to support. But what we all go through is unique. And for somebody who's going through this for the first time, those who've experienced it can really provide that guidance to them. Now, forcing it upon others is not a good idea either. People have to come to terms in terms of gaining that support, wanting that support. So if you yourself are a caregiver or suffering and need that help, there's a bonding through connection, experiences, and through workshops. Sometimes it's enough to just go there and sit on the side. Sometimes it's important to hear about other people's stories. And sometimes there's ways of saying, hey, you know what? I really could use help with getting a haircut. I could really use some help in terms of getting meals that are healthy to my home because I don't have the ability to stand. Part of it's also, hey, you know what? I am having that family member who doesn't seem to get it that I'm suffering or that somebody else in my family is suffering. And being able to share those experiences allows the isolation to be broken and can help to express those feelings in a way that otherwise other people don't get. Not everyone understands what cancer is. Not everyone understands what being a cancer survivor going through chemotherapy is and having that emotional burden going through that process. So being there, being a part of that community can allow you to one, learn from others, but two, help others. And I think that's one of the key parts. We have a lot of people in our community that don't have the social supports of friends and family, people who come from out of province that are brand new to our community. And you could be that support that could help guide them in terms of where to find services, where to find groups, where to go grab coffee afterwards, and just be there to listen. And also to be heard should you ever need to talk as well. And so self compassion here is that vital piece to navigation. And that is the goal here. Sometimes we can see down the road for miles upon miles, and we have that compass in our hands and we know where exactly we're going to go. And sometimes there's a deep, deep fog, and we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow or the week after. And by building on that slowly can allow us to build that resilience and improve that mental health and that well-being. And that can actually translate beyond just yourself. And don't get me wrong, you have to take care of yourself before you can help others. But once you do that, you can also be that pillar for somebody else as well who's also struggling, just like how others are there for you through your hard times. And so that went a little bit faster than I expected. But are there any questions I can answer?
I'm also just gonna stop the recording. So